Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Helping the Brave, and let's bring in our guest today. It's Robert Cook. How you doing, sir?
I'm well, and you?
I can't complain because nobody listens anymore anyway.
I know.
I kind of got over that. I'm not going to get too political. I do a talk radio show. I've been doing it for 6 years on iHeartMedia and about home, and it's about housing and finance and that kind of stuff. And we get a little political occasionally because of how much that affects your bottom line sometimes.
It's the same thing in the military. Politics matters, as we can see in Gaza.
Yeah, as we can see in a lot of things. Um, so before I get into that, I mean, because I don't want to get into how the world is so different. I remember my grandfather complaining about it when I was a kid. The world's totally different than it was when I was a kid. Now I'm pretty much doing the same thing. But when you have political people spouting things that Nazism spot, and certain things they've said, it's like, do you not know about history?
Well, if you don't, it tends to repeat itself.
Oh, you think like right now?
Like right now, yeah.
Yeah.
It's my grandfather and my father. Now, as you point out, I'm talking to my friends. We're all complaining the world's coming to an end. Well, it's not really.
Just as we know it.
As we know it, it's going to an end.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. All right, I read from your thing. You were in Vietnam.
I was.
When were you drafted or did you join?
No, I was an officer, so I went in ROTC and out of college, DMG. So I got to choose my branch, and I chose infantry. And I was in Germany for 3 years till 67, 68. I went to Vietnam. 69, I came back.
Well, 67, 68 was when it was really going hard, wasn't it?
Well, Tet was certainly interesting.
The what?
Tet. The Tet offensive was interesting.
Oh, gotcha.
They shot at us.
I don't know if you know that I was a corpsman in the Navy. My son's actually an airborne medic right now in the Army. So.
Oh yeah, I was in the airborne unit. I was the first of 509th in Germany. Wow. That's an interesting way because it's all volunteers.
Do you mean the airborne part?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. After about 4 years, he gave it up though. Well, he ran, they were in Alaska, the last jump, they were pushed into trees by the air and he hit them pretty hard. So he's like, I'm getting, I'm like, you're only 22. He goes, but it's a lot because he's carrying other stuff on top of it. He's a medic. They always, oh, you got free hand here, put this on.
So. Oh yeah, that's the way it works. I mean, but you're expected to do your share and you don't get to decide what that is.
That's how it used to be.
I think it's still that way in the military.
Yeah, it's a little different today.
Yeah.
It's an army of individuals, not an army of one.
Well,
no, because when I went to this boot camp and I went to stuff, I was like looking at stuff going, man, we wouldn't have gotten away with that. And it's a different, I look at it like, if you ever watch the movie Stripes, you remember that movie, and everybody joined up in the set when they were joining up and who they were. And they were still mess ups in the military. I kind of think of it's that where we are right now with the people joining is those types of people who need to change and become better men and women.
Well, it certainly lends itself to that. The military, I thank them forever for giving me a chance at age 22. They handed me $25 million worth of equipment, 204 people, and they said you can make any mistake once. And after you made that mistake, then they were very nice and they told you what you did wrong. And you made it again and bam, bam, bam. They just said, you don't fit in the hole anymore. We're going to drive you in there. And so you learn quickly to think about what you're going to do. And they help you. A lot of responsibility at a young age.
And it's good because that's when it needs to be. And I mean, I used it for what was a good purpose, which was I got my bachelor's and master's. And then went on and built a business and other stuff throughout the time. And I enjoyed my time after the fact more than I did when I was in it.
Well, I liked the life pretty well. My first wife didn't like it so much, but I liked the life. I got most of my graduate degree while I was going to night. I took accounting courses in Vietnam. You go any place, you can get somebody to teach something.
Right. Now, did you retire?
I did not. I was in 5 years, a little longer than you, 5.5 maybe. But I got out, and first job, I was not prepared for how different it was when I got out. Everybody was sort of on their own with no sense of mission. Looking back on it, it was the best about the military was you knew what the mission was. You knew what you were expected to do. They told you, they showed you. If you didn't do it, they slapped you.
Yeah. Can't do that in the civilian world.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of backstabbers.
Yeah, you get in trouble, especially today. I mean, and I was trying to explain that to other people, the differences, because when we go in, they teach us attention to detail. With the little stuff we do, at what's an SOP. Well, we know what that is, and so when we do things, we want to know. We can sit down and know the job by just going through the SOP and understanding what we could do. Where in the civilian world, they don't do the exact same thing.
Well, yeah, and the structure is very clear in the military, and you can jump around and do whatever you want. You'll get promoted a lot faster than the rules allow. And I thought that I could move faster on the outside. Well, it turns out on the outside, the structure's not so clear. And you can, but I liked it in the early days, knowing who your boss was, who worked for you. Those were all good things.
So, what was your first job when you got out?
I was working as a customer support rep for a computer time sharing company. And you sort of got thrown in. They said, well, there's a phone. People are going to call you and ask you questions. And from there, you figure it out for yourself. But the military would have handed me a manual and said, learn this and all that. But I was prepared. It was good.
So, for people who are younger, they'll have no understanding what a time sharing of a computer would be.
Right.
Those were the days where there was a huge room, and you had to. Because I remember my dad working for Ma Bell at the time, and we'd go in and see his stuff, and he's like, "These are the computer," and they split out the little cards with the punches in them to understand what was wrong.
Yeah, those days are over.
Yeah.
In 1971, I paid $1 million for a megabyte of storage. 1 million bytes. You get 16 trillion bytes for $139 on a thumb drive. Now, life has changed.
Yeah, I was explaining it because we used to, when I worked in physical therapy after 18 months, went to specialty school and everything. And these certain machines that we had, they used 5 1/4 floppy inch discs to actually run the machine while it was keeping track of everything. And it's like, there was no hard drives at that time when I was in.
Well, yeah, they came not soon after.
No, they came. Yeah, they came, and then everything changed, and then they went from 10 megabytes to 40, and we were like, wow, we're so rich. Look at all the storage capacity.
Yeah, the old removable disk drives held 25 megabytes on a stack of disks that spun around. There's so much has changed.
Oh, huge.
When you come into the military, you're prepared for putting everything in structure and saying, where do I fit and how do I do it? Nobody will tell you. You need to figure it out for yourself. But you got good training when you were there.
Now, after so most people get out, we lose our purpose because it's just we were so used to somebody telling us what to do, and I'm kind of hearing that in your first job there you did. How long were you at that job, and what did you? Because didn't you start? Aren't you an entrepreneur also?
Well, after that, yeah, that was. Then I went to work for Boeing Computer Services, which was a little more structured. That was good. And then I started a company in 1980 or so, a long time ago. And I've been a computer software entrepreneur for many years since. And then I went back to Vietnam in 1996, I suppose, and sat in the bow of the cruise ship and cried for the people you left behind, for the futility of it. But it was a good refresher about what's good about this country and what's good about other places. We sort of win. we got a little better. And when I got out, I felt good about it.
That's good. Now, because people don't understand, because again, we talked about history. People don't like to learn it, and because they, and they want to take statues down and certain things. And I'm not saying everybody, but if you look at what happened with our pullout in Vietnam, it was the exact same thing that happened with Afghanistan. I wasn't around at the time, but that's just what I've read. You were around at the same time. Is it pretty much the same? And I'm not knocking who did it. I'm just talking about how unfortunately we did it the way we did it.
Well, I thought the Afghanistan was a travesty.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm not the most liberal view on that, but getting out of Vietnam, we should have been there in the first place.
Right.
And getting out was ugly, but I was gone by then. They didn't get out. I left in 69. They got out in 74, I suppose. But I'm not crazy about the way that the politicians handle conflict these days. They want the military, well, go do this, go do that. Well, yeah, but a lot of people can get killed. Don't tell us that. And I'm good friends with a couple of retired 4-stars, and you can sit and react with them and about the way it should have been. But everything changes, everything evolves. But having the basic military background, I find is just really useful. When I find somebody that spent 3 or 4 years in the military, it's easier to work with them than if they didn't.
I totally agree. I'm in the mortgage industry, so I pretty much focus just with veterans, even though there's not a ton in my area, but that's what I focus on because I enjoy, we think the same way to a certain point. We want, get to a point, tell me the way it is, they know I'll do what and there's a built-in trust with us that we know that we're going to, do what we say we're going to do.
If you can put together that kind of group on the outside, it feels like you're on the inside, except a lot more freedom. But still, it's the trust. Right. It's everybody going in the same direction for the same thing. The mission orientation is everything.
So I know I don't want to go too fast over your books, but I did research some of the stuff that you had. How did you get into writing?
It was on that same trip when I went back to Vietnam. We left Saigon and started up the South China Sea toward Da Nang. We rented a Typhoon, and it was 60 knot winds across the bow, 60-foot seas. And so the captain would go up one side of a wave, turn, surf down the other. So we were making 4 or 5 knots, even though we were going faster than that. A lot of it was sideways. Not anything to do. Everybody in the boat was sick except me and the captain and some of the crew. So I got my computer out and decided to write a book. Off I went. But now I've written 4.
What was your first book?
It's a book called Cooch. And I really hadn't read the Urban Dictionary to see what Cooch meant for me. It was a diminutive of Cuchulainn, which is an old Irish warrior. And I used the name Cooch. And then I looked it up in the Urban Dictionary, and that was the Urban Dictionary. It was not a good thing to find out if the book was done and out in the wall. But it dealt with the drug situation in the U.S. And my protagonist was a former Marine who had been assigned to CIA Special Ops. And so he went around and confronted the drug use from South America and all that. And it did move right along. It was a fairly popular book. And in the summers, I had him going to Morocco to be with his grandfather, Bedouin grandfather. And sort of by accident, I had him into a religious situation with the Muslims that proved to be useful after that. And so second book was about Yemen and pumping some nerve gas in Dallas Stadium. Third book was about a preemptive, pretty current right now. It was about a preemptive strike in Iran by the U.S., trying to stop them from nuking Israel with a EMP weapon that would shut down their lights and all their weapon systems. And that's moved along since then. So in the last book, that one I'm out promoting right now is named The Mahdi, Mahdi, and it's a book about Gaza and the West Bank. And it starts out where he's appointed, the protagonist, Gooch, is appointed as the leader of the Bedouin tribes to recover the West Bank land that was appropriated by the Israelis. And it turns out that that is a hallmark of theocracy. You see it going on right now. So the book's very current. I finished it September last year, before the October 7th attacks by Hamas. That was an ugly, ugly attack.
Yeah. Weird how things work out sometimes, huh?
Yeah. Just keep your head down, your nose to the grindstone, and it'll work out.
Oh, I'm just talking about you writing and how your books are coming out at the right time.
Well, that's serendipity, but luck's a big part of everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course it is. How did you, I mean, my first question is why'd you pick a Marine instead of an Army person since you were in the Army? Not that
Well,
I'm just curious how you came to that.
I came to it because I had him stuck in South Carolina, the family, when he was a teenager. And Paris Island was close. So his father got the Medal of Honor in the Marine Corps, and he got stuck in boot camp in the Marine Corps. And I've always admired the Marines. They're all volunteers, and really a lot of esprit de corps that isn't present in back when in the drafted community.
I mean, a lot of, because I worked with the Marines. I was a corpsman, so they're my people. So,
Well, yeah, and medics work with the Army, and it's just a different thing.
I was just curious, because I was like, wow, he's picked a Marine and he's Army.
Well, I'm everything.
Yeah. I mean, just, one of those things. What's your long-term goal with this book set? You going to keep writing, or is this the final?
Well, I'm doing an audiobook right now. That's interesting. Never did one before. And it's strange. The first audiobook I listened to is my own, and it's 12 hours, 100,000 words. And that's a long time, but you get into it after a while. You can just listen rather than read.
Yeah.
And you get the narrators. There's 4 different narrators. So they're doing different voices for different people. So there's a woman who is the head of Mossad, and she has a sort of an Israeli accent. And then 2-3 minutes later, you find her in a different role without the accent. You sort of recognize the voice. But it's a fun thing to do. And I enjoy, in the case of this, I'm not a big fan of Netanyahu and the way he's handling the whole Gaza West Bank thing. It looks to me like he's creating a theocracy. And, if you're going to create a theocracy and really disrespect the people in your country that aren't a member of the religion in place, it'd be better if you're not a country of 6 million people, the size of New Jersey, disrespecting 2 billion people, 90 million people in Egypt alone. So they've got a rough road to hoe. This latest attack in Lebanon on Hezbollah is interesting. But they only get to make one mistake. The Arabs, they can make as many as they want. They get a lot of people. There was an apocryphal statement by Mayo, Chairman Mayo, during the Korean War. And allegedly, when he was asked about sending troops in to pick up the weapons of the men in front of them, because that was all the weapons they had. So when they killed the first wave, the second wave pick up the weapons continue to charge. You said, how long can you do that? German man said, what am I going to lose? 10 million men? It's just a matter of perspective. And the
Well,
Arabs are in a point to do that.
well, that's what we did in the 40s, right? I mean, when you look at some of those beaches that we took, I mean, the average age of uh, the life expectancy, on Normandy Beach, right, and certain things was not very long at all, and so we had more people.
It was for second lieutenants. It was 11 seconds. I mean, they were trained to look for the officers, but that's not very long.
No, and that's, I mean, the difference as you evolve as a country, supposedly, the more life is worth more, I mean, back then we had a lot of people, and we didn't have the technology we have now. But that if you look in what we lost, I mean, if you look at the Civil War, we lost more people than we've ever lost in a war. And then each war since then has been less.
Well, yeah, but now it looked like we're going to fight people with drones, unmanned vehicles. That could make the wars really bloody on the bad side. Because you could be flying a drone from an airbase in North Dakota against an antagonist in Israel or Egypt or any place. So unmanned warfare is, I think, the next big phenomenon that we're going to watch.
And I take it you're not for that?
Oh, I think you have to do whatever you have to do.
Okay.
So I'm for it. I wouldn't want my grandson. They better not try to put my grandson boots on the ground in Iran. I mean, that's just not. I don't mind them, with their drones and all. But taking my grandson, any of my grandsons, and put them on the ground in a war where I don't have a dog in that fight. That's a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's it seems like there's been more. I don't want to get into the whole politics of war and everything else there is, because we'd be here for hours. And I'm not saying you can't keep talking about it if you want to. It's just we'd be here for hours and hours talking about how things should be. Because I feel bad for the people who've been in the sand forever. If you look at the reservists who fought in Iraq and after that and all the different things, some of those guys have been 60 months over there, where active duty members have not been over there that many months.
Yep. It's an ugly thing. But we don't have as many troops over there as we did in Afghanistan as we did in Vietnam. So.
Well, the difference in Vietnam, you could go do something. You could go.
I suppose that's right.
You could do other things there. And when they're over there, they have to abide by. It's my problem with it. If we go to someplace in a war, we should not have to not do what we're supposed to be able to do. We should be on our base. We should be able to do what we want.
In my third book, I spent a lot of time talking about the rules of engagement. And that's what you're talking about. When you're allowed to shoot, when you're not. And if they're shooting at me, I want to shoot back.
Right.
The rules of engagement, I get in a lot of trouble if I kill some people. So I think that's what you're talking about, right?
There's that, and then also on when you're in the sand, there's no drinking, there's none of this other stuff. But when you're in Vietnam, it was a totally different thing. Or Korea, you could drink, you could do certain things if you wanted to. Where in the sand that we've been at lately, there's certain requirements that you couldn't do things. And I'm not talking the rules of engagement there. That's totally, you're waiting and waiting for the go ahead to do something when you should have been able to do something a lot earlier. That's what
you think.
Yeah.
We think.
Yeah.
We don't get to make those decisions. So it's very
it's sad because those people on the ground know better than the people in the ears.
I don't know about that.
Well, sometimes when you're in the fight, you do know better. There are sometimes when the people back in the fox, when you're in the foxhole and you have the generals back when they sometimes know better because they can see the whole playing field. I get that, but there are sometimes.
Well, there's never any perfect answers. and you really get beat up when you think you have one.
Right. What do you want people to get out of your books?
I wrote this latest book to try and provide, and I'm a Lutheran, so I don't have a dog in that fight, but to try and get people to see the perspective of the Muslim American when looking at the way his religious brethren are being slaughtered. And I would like my latest book finished before Hamas did their big attack. And I think that what I proposed in that book was to have Israel provide the Middle East leadership in engineering, technology, medicine, education. And they're good at that. And that's pretty replicable technology. And the rest of the Middle East will try and grow up around it. We're going to educate their kids. Right now, their kids aren't being educated. And that's another topic, another theme, is how do you educate 85 million Egyptian? That's a lot of people. You got to have a system. And I'm proposing a system and I sell it. And I think it's logical. And I'm getting a lot of good reviews on education of the masses as a tool to bring the masses to a new level of living, a new standard of living. And it makes sense, but you have to read the book, then you have to believe it first.
Where are your books sold?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I suppose bookstores if they order them. But that's it.
Did you self-publish? That's you self-published?
No, I use a hybrid. Somebody do the editing and the publishing and the shipping the books and all that. And I write it.
Right. No, I mean, because people don't realize you can self-publish these days. And I don't, and you can because I had a book come out 2 Februaries ago, Financial Freedom, Building Personal Wealth Through Home Ownership, to help clients understand the process. And I self-published, and I go through Amazon and other places, and people don't understand that process. And then because the reason I bring it up is people, when you self-publish, you own the work. It's still yours. You can do whatever you want with. If you have a publisher who handles it and paid you for it, it's no longer it's your book, but you can't use those words in a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, that self-published. I did self-publish the first 2 books, and then it became too much trouble. But and the use of an editor is interesting. This latest book was the first time I had what I consider to be a really good editor. And Greenleaf was a hybrid publisher, and they go through them. And I was pleased with how much better the story was told with a third-party editor. And you probably saw that with your book.
Mm-hmm.
People said, well, you had this, you had that. You knew if you had gone to the trouble of getting an editor, maybe it would have been fixed, but that's too much trouble. But
no, I'm sorry, Robert.
You don't sell a lot of books.
You don't?
Did you sell a lot of those?
I've sold a bunch, and I mean a lot more than I thought I would. But my purpose of it is just to educate people on the process. It's not about making the money off the books. You're writing books telling the story, but you did a series, and usually series they build upon the next and the next and the next, and people are waiting for them.
Yes, that's true, and it's a series of people that I created and I've grown up with. The first one was published in 2010. So another 15 years in the life of a warrior is a long time. He gets a gut and a gray in his beard and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Time to, and might have to retire pretty soon.
Might have to. I did. So, the whole publishing process, if you can get somebody to read your book and they'll tell somebody, that's the way you sell books. You can't reach everybody. They've got to tell their friends, hey, you should read this.
Right.
Either it's an interesting story or it's a way to look at your financial life more directly than you have been so far, which is what you did. You showed them a new way to be financially healthy.
Yep. Robert, it's nice having you on the show today. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we go? Or how do
Well,
people find, and also how do people find you if they want to get in contact with you?
there's a robertcooknovels.com website, and all the books are there, places to buy them. They can go to Amazon and just Google the Mahdi, M-A-H-D-I, Robert Cook. It'll show up, and there's a paperback version for $20 or 18 maybe, and a electronic version, a Kindle version for 8 or 9, I don't remember what. But you can find them, and there's in Amazon, as you're well aware, there are opportunities for your readers to voice their opinion about whether you have a good book or not. And if you go to Amazon, you can click on those reviews and find that you know about whether you'd like the book a lot before you ever buy it.
Right.
I'm sure you found it.
Yeah. And I'll have in the show notes, everybody, it'll be in the show notes how to get in contact with him. So I'll put that, make sure that's down in the show notes for people. All right, Robert.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate being on the show today. Really appreciate you being here.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.